So let's just hit the new button because I want to start fresh and walk you guys through some of the interface here. Let me open my notebook so I make sure I stay on task. All right, so we talked about just downloading the program, opening the program, the sample files, and creating a new project. So I just want to kind of quickly go over just what you're currently seeing right here. Now, anytime you open Dynamo, so we're looking at this project here. Actually, I'm going to open another project as well. So I have a sample school file that I use all the time for training. All right, so we have a sample school here that I've just opened. So right now, I'm currently in this project, so I'm not going to do a Revit training, but I'm in this project and I'm not in my last project, I'm in this project. When you open Dynamo, Dynamo is pretty specific. You have to be in the project first and then open Dynamo for the project that you want to make some iterations to, or else you get this warning that says Dynamo is not pointing to the current model or the current document. So that's pretty important. So we're going to change this around, go back to the current model. We're going to come back to the school and we'll show you some pretty cool stuff. And all right, let's open Dynamo. All right, so Dynamo is now available. All right, so this is pretty basic. Again, file is file, just like any other program. Edit is edit. Nothing really changes here. But some of the things that you do need to just know and understand, and these are things that I really tend to not change, but it's important that you know that is there. Again, we'll talk about connectors. Those are the squiggly lines that connects one node to another node. Some people like to change it to polylines just because of organization. These the scripts get pretty dense, so everyone has a different way that they like to see it. Some people like to like not to see the connectors. I don't know who is like that because that's pretty confusing. I don't understand why that's a button, to be quite honest with you, but you know, it's there. And then also there's options for whether or not you're going to see a background preview or not. So if you notice when we're creating the line, we're seeing a preview of the line being created here in this space here. And you could choose to turn that on or off. All right. You have some packages, right? So over here on the left, you have basically what's called a library. In this library, this is where all your nodes are going to live. All right. So all the nodes that we're going to use to build scripts, they live here, and they're pretty copacously organized. But just like Revit and just like most programming softwares, the amount of nodes that exist in this library is pretty limited. Okay. And this is why the community is really important, because what a lot of people have realized is that maybe there's a node that hasn't been created yet. And what people in the community have done is they've gone out and created their own packages. And a package is just a kit of different nodes that do what you want it to do. Okay? So, and I'll show you what this means. So typically, again, this node is just a line of code. And if I want to connect this node to something pretty specific, and the node doesn't already exist, then I'm going to have to double click and physically write in the code that I want. So, so I can type in this is tedious. I think that's how you spell tedious. Exclamation point and semicolon. And we'll do very tedious. Right? I think I'm writing that right. All right, and so what I've done is I've made some connectors here, and so I'm basically creating my own node within a code block. So, and again, that's very tedious. So what a lot of people in the community have done is they've created their own nodes, they've created their own packages, and you can download some of those nodes and packages here. Some really famous ones or some really good ones that you'll run into all the time. I don't have them downloaded on this profile, but I'll always use one called Clockwork. Hold on 1 second, it's still syncing. Are you gonna work for me? Maybe not. Oh, here we go. Clockwork. All right. So we got Clockwork. So I'm gonna download some of these because we're gonna use it later on. So let's install that. Yes. And then another one I like to use is called Springs. Springs node. And I'll just download those two.
Just making sure everyone has Wi-Fi in case they want to look at the packages.
Oh, great. So if you need Wi-Fi and you're on your laptop and you want to hop in and just download packages or play with this stuff on your own, see Gianni or grab that little standing menu thing over there. All right. Alrighty. So like I said, people have basically developed a kit of custom packages that you could download, and they all live here. You can download brand new packages. Sometimes the packages come out with new versions. You'll figure this out when you go to run a script, and for whatever reason that node that came from a package isn't working anymore, and it's just a good indication that maybe you need to just upgrade it. Okay, and that happens a lot. So you can manage package. So here's the two packages that I just downloaded, and I can show the contents, show the directory. I can get rid of it. I have a couple options just in terms of like looking at what's available inside of that package. And you'll see those packages down here. So this gave me a whole kit of nodes. Under my settings, again, this is just sort of to help you set up just the visual layout. For some numbers that we're going to put in, you can set the precision. So if you guys notice that when I typed in number here and put a number, the precision of that number has, whoops, let's move this over there. The precision of that number has 3 decimal places. So you can choose how precise that is going to look or not look. And also the render precision, I like to keep this pretty low. But the render precision is just talking about as you're developing your script, the information that will be developing in the background and sometimes live within your Revit model. Now, before I move on, there's a button down here that says automatic versus manual. And all this means is that as I'm developing my script, Dynamo's just gonna run, right? So without you asking it, it's just gonna start, as you start to drop in nodes. So for example, let's drop in another point. Actually, let's look up, let's go to my geometry and we'll go to solids. Let's do a cone. Okay, I've never used this node before, so let's move it off. Okay, we'll create a cone out there. No, I didn't do anything. All right, so let's just go back to what I know. Let's do point. And we'll do point by coordinates again. So as I develop this information, it's developing more stuff out here. And because I have this set to automatic, what it should be doing is it'll automatically create information here in my space. And if I don't want that to happen, here's a quick tip. If you're ever using Dynamo in an office on a live project, never should you ever have this set to automatic. Always manual, all right? You never want things populating inside of a live Revit project in the office. They won't tell you this online, all right? All right, so that's very important. All right, so I'm gonna get rid of all this. So again, so you have some settings here. We have the help options that, again, we can get access to our samples right from our help options or go to the wiki, or if I hit my about is gonna tell me the version of Dynamo that I'm in. So if I have issues and I wanna figure out what version I'm in, I'll go to help, I'll hit about, I'll figure out what version I'm currently in. All right, now a couple other things before I hop into a script is, again, here's my, all right, let me drop the point back in here. So here's my node here in the middle. And Right now I'm looking at a graphical view. I can switch between the graphical view and my view out here by hitting one of these two buttons. And I can kind of hit one of these buttons and scroll. Your middle, I'm gonna hit let's hit this guy. So your middle scroll will pan, and I'm sorry, your middle scroll will move the screen around, but to pan, it's actually opposite or not the same thing as Revit. It took me a bit to figure out, but you're gonna right click, and you're not gonna hit shift or anything like that. You're just gonna right click and hold, and that'll pan you around, okay? So just small quick tips that aren't very obvious when you're hopping into Dynamo for the first time. All right, so let's build, let's actually, I'm gonna open back my script line, and I just wanna do a little bit more explanation in terms of like some of the stuff. Are you guys, is this like the speed of where I'm going, is this good? Pretty good speed, not too complex, very basic? All right, awesome. I just wanna make sure that I'm not losing anybody. All right, so let's hop back into our PowerPoint. And so that was our quick walkthrough of the Dynamo interface, right? And it's pretty simple. So as we start to build out a node, one of the things that is important to understand that every node has some form of an output, okay? Every node. Every node may not have an input, but almost every node has an output, okay? And so that's what these connectors, that's what they're gonna be able to help you do. Now, let's go back to Dynamo. If I hover over it, the bottom right corner of every single node, hovering over it is gonna give me access to information. So if I pin that down, I'm seeing that the information input into that line here is 0, 0, 0. And as I move that line about, where'd my line go? There it is. All right, that's really awesome because it's even showing like a direction line. All right. So as I click on different nodes, you can kind of see in the background. Let me give you a better view of that. All right, so as I click on different nodes, it's gonna tell you what you're actually selecting. So when I click on the line node, the line is gonna highlight, okay? So you have a couple of different options there. If you don't want things to highlight, if you right click a node, you can turn off the preview button so that it doesn't show you a preview of what you're selecting, okay? So you have those two options there. Now, these nodes, again, as you hover over, you'll be able to see what that information is. And also, as I create my code, so let's say I have, sometimes Dynamo scripts, they look like this. You know, they look like this when you first start them. They're like really disorganized. And someone's like, no, I want multiple numbers. Everything must have a number. All right. So we'll connect this guy instead. We'll connect that one here. So I'm just gonna mess with this. We'll connect this guy. Gosh. All right, here we go. I think that works. All right, so I think everyone has some line. All right, so this is pretty disorganized, right? And what Dynamo gives you the chance to do is, as I'm starting to build my code and I want to start to get organized about how I'm building it, again, I'm a huge stickler for organization. If I highlight my entire code, right, so as you can see, my line in the background is, it's highlighting both the line and all the points involved here in the mix, okay? So, starting to do some funky stuff in my line. If I right click, I can create a group. So I can start to group all this information together, which allows me to grab that entire block of code and move it as one. Now, only after I've created a group, I can now click on my group, right click the group, and hit clean up node layout. It'll organize my stuff really nicely. All right, so that is like one of my favorites. All right, and then we're also gonna give this a title so that the next person that hops into this script knows what we're actually doing. So this creates a line. This creates a line. All right. So every time we develop sort of a block of code, we're going to group it. We'll give it a title, and this is just instructions for the next person. And I always also like to group them by color. So if one set of code is doing one thing versus another set of code, I'll start to group them together by color or definition, and so on and so forth. Okay. Now let's hop back in here. So this is output, input, hover over, you'll get information there. And again, each node is a line of code, and scripts are created by connecting these pieces of code together. All right, very simple. Now, as you work, you're gonna see different colors of nodes. And I wanna help you understand what they are. So, so that top bar can either be filled in, it could be yellow, or it could be red. And if I hop back into Dynamo, if I get rid of some of these definitions, because this code here is not satisfied at all, it still needs one more point to be input. That bar is no longer dark gray. Okay, so as soon as I connect it, it's now dark gray. All right, so it's just little things. Now, let's see. If there's, and a lot of times you'll get this. You get, so you have an unsatisfied node, a satisfied node, and then a lot of times you'll get a warning. And a lot of times a warning just purely happens when there's an incorrect value connected to the input. So let's say, for example, the points are connected, but for some reason, there's no information here. So that'll turn my my end node yellow, and Dynamo's giving me a warning that say, hey, I'm missing some information. So anytime you see a warning, just hover over it. You'll get this type of information. Again, this information that you get is pretty important when you want to post an issue to a forum, because you're going to hover over, basically copy and paste this information. Or I always like to just do a quick screenshot to show people. But a screenshot isn't going to show me this information. So I always like to include my warnings with every question that I post online, so I can get a pretty good answer back out. All right. So you'll get that a lot of times, and then the one that is going to be pretty hard to replicate here is sometimes you'll get a red, and a lot of times you'll get that when you download a node from online, and it's using nodes that are a part of packages that you don't have installed right now. And I don't know how to really troubleshoot this one, but a lot of times you'll download, you'll pretty much download a script from online. It'll have a bunch of these red nodes, and they're a part of packages, and you have no idea what package it belongs to. There's a lot of packages out there. It's pretty hard to guess. So what you're gonna have to do is go back to where you found it and ask somebody, what package is this a part of? Some manufacturers of nodes, they try to add a little bit of design into what the node looks like, which gives you a clue to what they might look like. So let's go down to my Clockwork. So we'll bring in something from Clockwork. All right, so we'll bring in a node here. Whoops, too many. There we go. So you notice just the difference in how the node looks. So if I bring that in, I kind of know because of the style of how it looks, it's probably a Clockwork node versus Springs. I think Springs actually looks the same. Let's see. Yeah, Springs looks almost, yeah, it's basically identical. So it's almost one way to know. So this is super confusing because if I download this script, I have no idea. And again, I have to kind of rely on the community to ask and find out what node is this. All right. Now, so this is sort of the 4 types of nodes that you'll see, and so this is like just really easy logic as you start to put it together. Either your node is unsatisfied, or it's satisfied, which means that you're on the right track, or as you start to go, once you hit the run button, the warnings typically show up after you hit run. and then you'll figure out, okay, I have a warning here, or the errors will show up if, actually, I know a good one where I can show you an error. So let's type in number. So let's say if I put anything other than a number, so let's say the letter G, that'll give me an error because it's telling me that that input must be a numeric value. So you'll kind of get the errors as you start to build your code out. All right. So just on this, does anyone have any questions at all? I'm going to open up for questions at the end, but I always like to break in between and ask anyone if this makes sense. All right. All right, awesome. So what I want to do for, I want to say the next 30 minutes is I want to create a script. And some of the most practical applications for Dynamo is typically for data management. If I go to the Dynamo website, and we'll go to Explore. Hold on one second, did I delete the, all right, it's just loading. So, here's what's really intimidating about Dynamo sometimes when you sort of experience it and you see other people using it, is you see stuff like this. And I don't know in whose career someone's gonna have the feed to allow you to create stuff like that. So it's really rare. So Dynamo has this nostalgia where this is like stuff that we do in architecture school, right? Where we open up Grasshopper and we start to create tessellated surfaces and start to like model it and price it and all that stuff. And actually, some of the more advanced trainings where we'll have a guest speaker come in, they'll show you some really fancy stuff like that. But if this is your first time using Dynamo, or if you're at an office, a lot of times you're asking yourself like, well, Dynamo's pretty useless because, I mean, we don't do, what was that example? We don't do stuff like this, right? And I don't know, why am I gonna write in code for a line? I'm just gonna draw a line, duh. So that it could make it sort of pretty daunting. Now, on a day-to-day basis, especially at Revit Gods, one of the things that we believe in terms of using Dynamo is a fantastic tool for data management. And almost all the trainings that we do around Dynamo are about data management. And data management as it relates to putting together a set of construction documents. The whole reason why Revit Gods exists is so that we can show you from start to finish how to put a set of construction documents together. Whether you're an engineer, an architect, a plumber, it doesn't matter who you are. We want to show you how to create construction documents. And we think that the heavy lifting of, let's just say 90% of projects in Revit, it really happens in schematic design and design development, okay? In Revit, the whole industry sort of changes because back in the day when everyone was using CAD, the typical fee, like if I was the firm owner and I'm gonna get a project and fee this out, I'll bill my client maybe 20% for schematic design, 30% of the fee for design development, and then the other 50% of the fee was spent in creating construction documents. All right? Now in Revit, that's totally different because we're doing so much work on the front end, it's not 20, 30, 50. Now, it's exactly a third, a third, a third. You'll spend a third of your time in schematic design, a third of your time in design development, and a third of your time in Revit in construction documents. Now, what we're gonna use Dynamo for is to automate the construction documentation process, okay? Because what Revit is allowing us to do, I think one of the best selling points is that if you switch to Revit, and if you're a firm that your projects rarely make it to construction documents, well, we just earned you a little bit more money on your fee. Right around 15% more on the front end. All right? Now, the second battle is, can we figure out how to make construction documents go faster? So you still get paid for the third, but construction documents happen so much faster, and now we're profitable. Make sense? And that's really what we want to use Dynamo for by the time we hit the construction documentation process. We want to use Dynamo to help us automate a lot of this information, the data entry, filling out schedules, populating tags, populating information throughout the program. We want to use Dynamo to extract the information out of Revit and give us the opportunity to manipulate it. And so at Revit Guys, that's primarily what we use the program for. We don't use it for really anything else. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through a couple scripts. And again, I'm not trying to accomplish anything here. I just want to help you understand the logic of developing scripts and using it primarily for data management. So let me pull out my cheat sheet because I don't have that type of a memory. All right, I think this is the right one. All right, so, all right, here we go. All right, so let me show you guys just some basics in extracting data out of Revit. So let's go into Dynamo, and I'm gonna close all of this stuff that I was playing with before. So let's close, actually I'm gonna close Dynamo altogether. Okay, because I want to get into my project first. Close this, don't need it anymore. And what I wanna do is, I wanna get into this project and start to extract some of the information out of this project so that we can see it in Dynamo and start to manipulate from Dynamo. So again, I'll go to my Manage tab and I'll open Dynamo. And we'll just start from scratch. So while I'm in Dynamo, the first thing I'm going to do is we are going, so the way I'd like to navigate the library, again, if you're, one of the most daunting things about Dynamo is it's hard to know what node you want, especially when you're starting from scratch. It's really hard to know what node you want. So, you know, the best way to start, like I said, is always with the end in mind. All right. Now, this training is going to be a little different because there is no end. We're just showing you how to create some stuff here in Dynamo. So there really isn't really an end. I'm sorry, but you know, we'll show you just some basics. So let's say I want to, let's say we have a Revit tab here in my library. And my Revit tab, most of the nodes here are going to allow us to interact directly with Revit. So I'll go to Selection. And what I want to do is I want to select Elements, where it is. Select. It's like faces, edges. Here we are. So what I want to do first is select Model Element. So let's say there's a piece of information in Revit that I want to first grab out. So we'll start with this one first because this node is actually going to allow me to hit the select button, minimize Dynamo. I'll select, let's say, that column, right? And once I select that column, I'll open Dynamo again, and now it's giving me that type, the column information. So it's 18 by 18, which is just the name of the column. It's an 18 by 18 column. Now, almost every time you'll see this thing that says element and a set of numbers right next to it. And what the numbers are, those numbers is an element ID. Everything in Revit has an element ID. So everything has an identification number, a way for you to know exactly what it is. Okay? So, and actually, in fact, if I select this wall and I go to my Manage tab, and in my Manage tab in Revit, if I go to where it says Inquiry, I can get the element ID of that selection. So there's the identification number of that element that I have selected. So this is how Revit is able to keep track. Again, this is just, even though we're looking at, you know, we're looking at tables, chairs, walls. Has anyone ever seen the movie The Matrix? Yes? Most people? All right. And they're just kind of looking at zeros and ones, you know, and they're not looking at anything. You know, you have the guys who are in the real world fighting, doing the cool stuff, but then you have the, what is it, the operator, And the operator isn't looking at a movie screen like we're looking at the movie screen. He's just looking at zeros and ones. And what he's looking at is these numbers connecting to other numbers, which is how these programs are developed. So it's pretty simple. So we have our first node, which is select model element. And what we can do is there's another node where I'll go up to my display. My display is when I want to see stuff, and a node that I use all the time is the watch node. The watch is gonna, even though I can hover over and see this information and pin it, the watch node does a little bit more of an effective job of allowing us to see this information. Okay, so if I decide to select something different, all right, so we'll select that group here. Let's see what it gives me. Come on. All right, it knows it's a group. It doesn't know what's in the group, it just knows that it's selecting a group. Okay, now, so you have that first node. And let's go back into Revit. We'll do selection. So let's say you're building a script. You have no idea, well, you have no idea how you're going to go about this, but if you want to start from the beginning, let's do select model elements. So let's say we actually want to work off of selecting multiple elements. So we'll hit the select button again. Now I'm going to click and highlight. We'll go back into Dynamo, and now it's giving me the element IDs of everything that I clicked and highlighted. And I'm just going to take this watch node, I'm going to copy and paste it, and now I want to have Revit show me a list of everything that I'm looking at. So this is giving me a list, and it's categorizing it by wall, and the green number is Revit's identification number. Okay? Now, something that you have to really understand about these lists is that these lists always start with 0. All right? So it's a little confusing, but anytime that you take this information and want to bring it into a different software like Excel or do anything with it, you have to account that your list starts from 0 and not 1. And that's really important. So the first set of numbers is just, in some cases, just the instance of the family, or maybe just the category that it falls into. All right, so this is kind of giving us a little bit of information. Now, I'll show you one more. And actually, this is how I tend to work, because if I'm developing a script from scratch, I usually start with categories. So let's say I know for a fact that I want to play with the doors. This categories node gives me all the categories that live inside of Revit. So it could be areas, cable trays, doesn't matter, ceilings. So this kind of gives me the ability to grab any category. So we'll get doors. All right, so type that in, doors, whoops. Move this down. And now that we know we want doors, I want Dynamo to extract, because again, remember, because we selected the specific items that we wanted, that's how Dynamo knows to spit out the information. But if I, also, an easy way to get a node is to right click, and you'll have the search option. So let's go watch. So if I connect this category of doors to the watch node, it's not going to tell me nothing. It's just going to say, oh yeah, doors. Nothing special there. So, so it's like, okay, give me a little bit more than that. All right. So what I have to do is I need another node in between that tells Dynamo, that says get all, well, what is it called? Let's get all elements. All right, let's type in elements because it's not coming up. Element types, no. All right. Give me 1 second. It is all elements. Come on. It's like the easiest ones I can never find. get it. Element, so let's just do element categories because I want it. Elements by category, thanks. Thank you. This guy right, yeah, here we go. Oh, here it is, all elements of category. All right, thanks guys. Awesome. So what you need a node in between that pretty much allows you to get, so we know we want doors, and this is gonna connect all the doors to that category. So now this node is gonna go into Revit and say, hey, get all the doors that currently live in this project. So let's connect that to our watch node. And here's all our doors. All right. So now that I have this list of information, there's multiple things that we can do with it. So again, when we talk about sort of automating the construction design process, you know, if I'm like really frustrated because I'm doing a residential project and I don't really feel like tagging all the doors, or maybe it's a commercial project, and I just want to map all the room names or the room numbers to the door numbers, right? There should be an easy way to do it in Revit, but actually there isn't. And if I'm thinking, okay, I want to create a script, all right, this is about doors. Doors is where I'm frustrated. I need to get all the doors. Here's a list of them. All right, and then I'll probably grab another category that says rooms, and so that I can start to join these two pieces of information. Now, for this script that we're going to build out, what we're actually going to do is we're going to just do a simple script that I like to train in all the time that will take all these doors and just bring it into Excel. Okay, so we'll take, so we get, we have our doors, and what I want is out of the doors that currently live in that project, I want all the parameters. All right, so we'll go element, this one I know, and we want to get parameter. And we want to get the parameter value by name. So we need a node that is going to allow us to extract out all the different parameter values for each node. So for each door. So this watch, we don't have to go elements and connect it here. We can actually, this watch sometimes acts as a conduit. So I can go out the other end and connect my doors to the elements, and here's my, here's the elements that I'm feeding it into. So I want Dynamo to get the parameter values of these doors. And now I just have to tell it the name of the parameter, all right? Now, this is case sensitive, and there's two ways to do this. The first way to do it is you can either type in a string. So let's say I want something pretty simple like the mark value of the door. So the mark value of the door, just for anyone who's new to Revit, every element in Revit has this value that says mark. That's pretty standard in Revit, right? They always have mark. This is how we tag doors, or assign them a door tag. And then also you'll have, where is it? Type mark, you always have type mark. So you always have type mark, and then you always have a mark. And these are two pieces of information that we always want to parse out and basically edit. So we'll go into Dynamo, and we know we want the mark. I can either type in a string that says mark. The second way to do it is to double click and type in a code block. You might need a little bit of, you just have to understand code a little bit, but anytime you type a phrase into a code block, you always have to have parentheses. And we'll type in mark. This is case sensitive. We'll end it with parentheses, and every line of code that I end inside of a code block, I have to end it with a semicolon, okay? Semicolons are like gods inside of like programming languages. So I can connect these guys here, and I'll do another watch node. Whoops. So let's see what we get back out on the other end. All right, so now you can see my list of, it's matching 1 to 1. So 0 has that mark, 1 has that mark, and so on and so forth. So now I have a running list of all the marks in my project. Okay, so we'll do this pretty simple, and now we'll take this list that we have here, and now what we want to do is actually create a list. Because this watch isn't a list, it's just giving us what the data is, right? It's not actually developing anything really for us, it's just showing us what the data is. But what we physically want to do is we want to develop a real list that we can move somewhere else. So we'll create a list, we'll connect this to that list item, okay? So we have list create, and something that, you know, because of this script that we're going to run in particular, what we want to do is bring this script into Excel, right? And what, excuse me. So what we need to be able to do is we need to take this list and put this list into a language that Excel can understand, because if I just take this list here from 0 to 27, it's not going to orient it in Excel the right way. I want to orient this in columns, so I need another node here that says list transpose. So we'll connect this guy to that guy. So we're having a bunch of fun here. And also, in the mind, we'll type in Excel, right? And we want to export to Excel. So here's our information, here's our list, here's everything that we have, and we want to take this information and then basically plug it into Excel. So here's our list, and at the end, we're basically going to take this list and plug it into this value that says data. Now, just in this training, there's a couple other nodes that I want to go through, and this is just sort of a quick tip. So, when we export, when we have like kind of final nodes that look like this, right? If we start off with a node like this, the other node, the other inputs that it's looking for, like file name, sheet name, the start row, and if you hover, it's going to give you basically a tooltip. And remember, 0 is going to be row 1, so you have to tell it wants to start column, and you also need to, if you already have a file created, you're going to need it to overwrite. So I'm just going to go through a couple nodes here. So the first one, we'll do file name because we want to save this somewhere. So we'll go file path. Then we need the sheet name. So do I have Excel here? Yes, I do. Let's open Excel. All right, so what Dynamo is looking for, and again, you have to basically give it everything. You have to give it the name of the sheet. You have to tell Dynamo, hey, how is this sheet gonna start? Is it gonna start at this row? And that one value, remember that one value is really 0. Okay, so you just have to remember that 1 is really 0. All right, so we need the name of the sheet. So again, we'll do a string or a cold block, but this time we'll do a string. And we'll call this doors. Then we need start row, so we'll just give it an integer instead of a number. And you can either do a number slider. Actually, maybe a number might be a little bit better. All right, and this is going to start at 1. So the start row will be 1, the start column will be 1. And there's a pretty common node that you're going to use all the time. It's called Boolean. Boolean. Is that Boolean? All right. It's like one day you figure out how it's really pronounced. And what Boolean is, it's pretty universal code that is just a true-false statement. It just means either Boolean usually means either 0 or 1. I think 0 being true and 1 being false. That's all it is. So we're gonna put Boolean, we're gonna hook a Boolean into the overwrite, and all it's gonna do is, it's just gonna give you a value of, hey, um, if there's already a file here, we're saying yes, we want you to overwrite. So Boolean is just used to say yes or no. Okay, so these are just some common nodes that we're going through anytime that we develop a script. So let's, so let's choose a file path. And for our training here, Dynamo 101, we're gonna call this doors. Okay, pdug. All right, so now it's happy. That's cute. All right, knows it's on Dropbox. Probably because it's Excel. All right, anyway. I've actually never seen that before. All right, so I think we're good to go. All right, so I did a never shoot you ever. So it's actually, I think already probably created my Excel. So where is it? Okay. Okay. So here's what happened. So every time, because I didn't set it to manual, it was developing Excel spreadsheets every single time until I finally gave it a file name. All right. And I don't know where the other ones are saved. But so that's why. All right. So that's what happens. All right. So I kind of broke one of my own never should you ever. Always keep it on manual. All right. So this is just pretty common stuff. A lot of times, once we get here, and if you were in the last Dynamo session from I think our January event, this is the same exact script that I went through where I was showing you guys how to just take information out of Revit, bring it into Excel, and then take the information to Excel and push it back into Revit. And I like to use this one a lot because this script just allows me to, if I want to really rename my values here, so really everything's really 200 and we got 201, so on and so forth. It's a lot easier to rename my stuff from Excel than it is to do it in Revit. And that's the only reason why I would take this basic script, bring it out to Excel. All right, so let's close all my stuff here. Except for this one. All right, there we go. Well, hopefully you guys understood just how to create just a little bit of data management and also understand the logic of putting some basic scripts together and how you should start to use Dynamo, or how you should at least start to think about Dynamo. All right. So I think the last part is, does anyone have any questions about anything that we went through, or even about pdug or what we're doing here? I'm sorry, before I allow you guys to ask questions, because I know there's a lot of you guys who work at awesome firms, and a lot of you guys love what we're doing here, and we want to keep doing it. So there's two things that pdug really needs. The first thing that pdug always needs are volunteers, people who are really excited about this stuff and want to be a part of Philadelphia Dynamo user group. In terms of either putting events together or just kind of updating stuff, you want to, again, our goal is to increase the not just the BIM literacy, but the literacy of Dynamo in Philadelphia. Okay. The second thing that we are going to need is we need some more awesome hosts like L2P. All right. And if you look at this room, this event was sold out. And if you have an office that you think would want to get into Dynamo, there's a couple benefits because you get a free presentation in your office, so you don't have to travel far. You also get free food provided by Microsoft. And if your office has a cool space or a pretty big space that can accommodate 20, probably like 30 to 40 people, just shoot us an email at phillydynamo@gmail.com, and we would love to have an event at your firm. So, but with that, does anyone have any questions at all?
So you're trying to download a package. I got this message that said the package was either too
So, good question. That happens a lot. So depending on the package, I would post a note on the forum and say, hey, I'm using, again, you're gonna go to your Dynamo, hit about, and grab your current build of Dynamo, post that to a forum, and then post the package you're trying to download, and say, hey, I'm having compatibility issues. And that'll do two things. It'll let the package developers know to, work out whatever kinks so that it could be compatible with either one version or all versions or whatever the case may be, and then you'll get it answered pretty quickly. Okay, the response on the forums are pretty fast, unless you're asking something that's like rocket science, and it won't be as fast. All right, any other questions? All right, if not, you can always come up, but again, guys, it was a pleasure hanging out with you guys. Thank you for coming out to our meeting.